Dear students. Today we're going to have the last section of chapter 2. Okay, you remember that we left Stephen with his father and the idea of him as a fetus and he's inexperienced. Okay, this last section starts with him winning a prize money for an essay that he excelled at writing. So he's in the Bank of Ireland and he just got paid a really good, handsome kind of money. He wants to change all the things in his life that he thought are caused by lack of money. So, for a swift season of merrymaking, the money of his prizes ran through Stephen's fingers. He started first buying mantle for his mother. He took his family to expensive dinners. He used to bring great parcels of groceries and delicacies and dried foods every day. Every now and then, he takes them to theater to watch Lady of Leon and so on. His coat was full with chocolate. He brought presents for everyone. He even opened a lawn bank account for his family so they can just have the pleasure of making out receipts and interest. Okay, so when he was a really spendthrift. He thought that the thing he feels so sad about was the lack of money. But he discovers that money was not the issue. He tried to spend every cent of it to the last, and when he could do no more, he drove up and down the city in a trams. Then the season of pleasure came to an end. Okay, once his money was finished and there's nothing left, he just realized that his household returned to its usual way of life. Nothing actually changed. He has a sudden realization, a disillusionment of what was I doing? It was not money. How foolish his aim had been. He had tried to build a breakwater of order and elegance. This is a beautiful imagery of water. You remember that Stephen always describe water in different cases, and most of the cases it has a negative sense. Here, he's just comparing his status with making a dam of water against the tide of life. It's a very beautiful imagery. Let's read it. How foolish his aim had been. He had tried to build a breakwater of order and elegance against the sordid tide of life without him, and to dam up by rules of conduct and active interest and new filial relationships. The powerful recurrence of the tide within him, useless. From without, as form within the water had flowed over his barriers, their tides began once more to jostle fiercely above the crumbled mole. He's describing himself as a crumbling mole that he tried and moles, the animals that try to build dams of water. He just imagined himself that mole after the tide had just came and ruined his dam. This is a very beautiful water imagery. And he gets very frustrated. He feels deep isolation. He saw clearly too his own futile isolation. He had not gone one step nearer to the lives he had sought to approach, nor bridge the restless shame and rancor that had divided him from mother and brother and sister. He felt that he was hardly of the one blood with them, but stood to them rather in a mystical kinship of foster age or foster child and a foster brother. You know, this is incarnation of the idea of isolation. You remember in section 4, he feels completely disconnected with his father. And now he's just showing you that he thought money will make him closer to his mother and brother and sister. And it just discovered that no, it was not money. It's not the same blood as if he's a foster child. This is another example of him feeling isolated, not only in the classroom, but also in his own home. So, being isolated, no companionships, no friends, family he doesn't feel connected to. So, he's not into sports, he's into arts, and he finds refuge in thinking of sin. He started to develop a kind of interest in women, but not a normal kind of interest. He just develops into lust, and that lust just transgression, and he wants to transfigure, and he wants to, he wants to experiment things. So his first Mercedes, the image of Mercedes transverse the background of his memory. Every now and then he remembers her as if the same, she's the perfect symbol of woman for him. He's his infatuation. He's not his pure love as Elaine. She's the one who developed sin with. And if you remember in this section 1, Mercedes, he had always thought of her as being alone with her in a garden, and he's going to refuse her, as the Count of de Monte Cristo did. But in spite of his horrible reality, which lay between his hope of then and now, of a holy encounter. He thinks that if he encounters his Mercedes, the idea of the artistic woman, he imagined at which weakness and timidity, he imagined weakness, timidity, and inexperience were to fall from him. He thinks that if he has an encounter with Mercedes or anyone who represents her, all his weakness, timidity, and inexperience will fall off him. He will not be a fetus anymore. He's not a child anymore. So, this idea keeps haunting him. His blood was in revolt. Okay. Uh, this is a very powerful passage. He wandered up and down the dark, slimy streets, peering into the gloom of lanes and doorways, listening eagerly for any sound. He moaned to himself like a beast. He wanted to sin with another of his kin, to force another being to sin with him, and to exult with her in sin. Okay. And he again using the water imagery in a negative way. He says he felt some dark presence moving irresistibly upon him from the darkness, a presence subtle and murmurous as a flood filling him wholly with itself. Okay, that lust that had flooded him forced him into wandering into maze. You see, again, we have the imagery of maze and labyrinth that we took in the epigram of Icarus, and to a maze of narrow and dirty streets to find a young prostitute who was dressed in pink. She pulled him, and he surrendered completely to her like a child, and then he burst into hysterical weeping. Tears of joy and relief shone in his delighted eyes, and, you know, he just surrendered himself completely, body and mind. Now thinks himself is transfigured. Thank you. And this is the moment of stasis that we took, the calmness. Now he's calm because he satisfied his lust, and he realized that money has didn't do anything for him. His family relationship, he's not connected to, he's isolated, he has no companions whatsoever, and his epiphanies incarnated by, okay, I love women and now I'm in the arms of a one. Thank you for listening.